What's up? So we got Cobra Kai Season 4, Episode 6, Kicks Get Chicks. So this episode starts off with the All Valley board, the All Valley board, and they're reviewing the All Valley stuff, and the All Valley stuff, and they create a new rule that there will be 2 All Valley champions, a guys one and a girls one, and then there also will be kata and other different stuff and board breaking, and Daniel thinks it's a good idea, but Johnny's like, crap, this kata is just dancing, and a girl tournament is a bad idea. Like Johnny is like, and he's like, where are we gonna find her? So Johnny goes like, hey, let's find some girl to join the team. So he's like, do you guys know any girls? And then they're like, no. And he's like, hey. And Bert's like, hey, I know a debate team. He's like, debate team? Like, what the crap? So Terry and Silver and Chris, sorry, I keep getting names confused. Chris and Silver are laughing about this. Slang about, like, Daniel and Johnny will lose and Cobra Kai will win and all this stuff. And then Terry reveals new Cobra Kai merch. And so Johnny and Daniel are hanging out. So Johnny and Miguel. See, I'm doing this game where I get Daniel and Miguel's names confused. Johnny and Miguel are hanging out, and they're looking for ladies, and Johnny confuses an asexual one. When he looks up to one, he's like, hey, look at Miguel over there flexing, and she's like, she's asexual, and he's like, he's asexual too. Come on, Johnny. She likes women, not men. And so then Moon shows up, and Moon's like, hey, since Moon's the way to hippie stuff, she's not into fighting, and she's like, hey, I'll join your guys' karate class, and they're like, yeah, and then she's like, is there fighting involved? And they're like, yeah, and she's like, no, that's my ex-girlfriend Piper. Remember her? So they basically go up to her, and she's like, and they convince her until, guess what? Her friends introduce her to the Cobra Kai merch, and she's totally on board now with joining Cobra Kai. Because when they're waiting for her, Miguel sees sees a video of her and her friends putting on the Cobra Kai merch, saying that they're now Cobra Kais now, and they're like, and Johnny's like, what? She's on Team Cobra Kai now? Yeah. So yeah. Piper, you're choosing the wrong side. If you just went with Daniel and Johnny, and Miguel, you'd be on a great side. But now you're joining the side of if you want to be a villain. So I guess Piper's a villain now. So yeah. So they decide to go to a debate team, and when the girl rips up the guy's book and tells him to choke on it, Johnny's like, I guess we found our female cobra, found our female eagle fang. So yeah, I guess that's Devin. I don't know. Meanwhile, Tori gets a visit from her aunt, who basically tells Tori that she wants Tori's mom to die, so she can get some inheritance from it. And Tori's like, and she even gets her brother's name wrong. So Tori decides to show up at the LaRusso's house, and wants to go back to school. But when Sam sees it, Sam loses it. She loses her mind. And she loses her mind saying about how can they give what Tori wants and not think about what she wants, and she just bolts out of there. So, who does Sam go to? Aisha. Yes, Aisha is back in this episode, guys, because we haven't seen her since season 2. It's great seeing Nicole Brown in this show. Like, we haven't seen her since season 2, and Aisha basically explains that when she went to her new school, she couldn't make any friends. So she couldn't make any friends until she decided to strike first and decided to befriend her new befriend a girl that she thought was gonna punch her in the face. And now that girl is now her new school best friend. So Sam decides to not take Aisha's advice. Because we thought she was, that she tells Daniel that she now agrees with Sam, that she agrees with Sam, and she agrees with Amanda and Daniel. But when Tori gets to school, Sam just forgets all about what Aisha said about making Tori your best friend, and she's like, "Oh, Tori, yeah, this is just like the writers should be like, hey, we're gonna listen to Aisha's advice," and then not listen to Aisha's advice because they want Tori and Sam to still hate each other. Like, what was the point of having Aisha say all this stuff if Sam's just gonna forget it all and go back to hating Tori? Like, what was the point? It was great having Aisha in this episode, so we haven't seen Aisha since season 4, since season 2, and now she's in this episode in season 4. But what was the point of having her say that thing about her rival becoming her best friend if Sam's just gonna forget all that and say, "Hey Tori, you may have been able to convince my parents, but if you with some sob story, but if you like sneeze funny, I'm gonna attack you." Like, what was the point of all that? And yeah, the Sam stuff this season is pretty weak. Like, last episode, like, I don't like her when she kissed Miguel in front of Tori, and now she basically disregards what Aisha told her about becoming friends with Sam to have a rivalry with her again. This is the worst. This is the worst Sam story ever. Sam had better stories in season 1, 2, and 3. Season 4 is just like, oh, we're gonna like, Aisha return into the episode, only for Sam to just not listen to what Aisha says and continue to hate Tori for no reason. What was the point of her saying that she's going to take Daniel and Amanda, what Daniel and Amanda said, but then forgets it? So yeah, so now let's talk about the Robbie and Eli story, or Eli, because now that he's no more Mohawk, we can't call him Hawk anymore. Let's talk about the Robbie and Eli story, which obviously is just two. Robbie only has one scene in this entire episode. No Kenny storyline, just a Robbie story. So Robbie decides to show up at a convenience store, and who shows up too? But Daniel, and Daniel's basically like, talking bad about Terry Silver. And who's behind him? Terry Silver, because this show is so predictable, and as my dad said, this show is so predictable and you can expect everything coming. So Terry shows up, and he's like, "You heard the guy, Daniel, he wants nothing to do with you," and Robbie just walks out. And then then Terry says, "Oh," starts saying about how Terry tortured him, but Terry's like, "No, I didn't torture you, bro. I just let out the anger that you had inside you." And he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna..." When we win the valley, you and Cobra Kai will close. And then Terry's like, "One of us will." And then the guy's like, "Hey, this isn't... If you want to have a board meeting, buy something." But then the guy looks at Terry, and the guy's just like, "Oh, fine." So then let's talk about the Eli story. But, by the way, this is not my favorite episode of the season. Not my favorite episode. This episode's kind of Okay, but anyway. Eli's, in a funk now because obviously he lost his mohawk. And he feels like his mohawk is the one thing that defined him. And yeah, so Dimitri's trying to pull him out of that funk, saying, hey, who cares about a mohawk? Like, dude, you're still yourself. You're still Eli. Who cares about a mohawk? But Dimitri's like, but he's like, hey, come back to Miyagi-Do or go to Eagle Fang. He's like, I'm not going to either. I quit karate. And he's like, and he starts saying, wait a minute, you quit karate, Eli? You were the reason why I joined karate. Like, you being evil Hawk was the only reason why I joined karate, and I like it. Dimitri's really excited to join the All Valley. So, I even showed a video of him and Eli doing a very good song saying Eli and Dimitri, binary brothers, and it's really cool. So this motivates Eli to come join Miyagi-Do karate, and that kind of where this episode ends. The episode ends with the Sam stuff. So this is maybe my least favorite episode of the show because of the Sam stuff that Sam learns that she immediately forgets. Like, Aisha, I like Aisha in this episode because she's just meant to be Sam learns a lesson, but then Sam completely forgets that lesson, so what was the point? What was the point of having Aisha in this episode? Sam's just gonna learn a lesson and then forget the lesson. Like, the lesson was, hey, don't hold grudges against the people that once attacked you. Make them your friends. But Sam's just like, forget that lesson. I'm gonna continue to dislike Tori because the show needs this. Like, what? This is my least favorite episode of the show. It's not because of the Johnny recruiting Devin, or I think that's her name, into Eagle Fang. It's not because of the Creed stuff. It's not because of the Eli stuff. The Eli stuff is pretty cool, but it's because of Sam and how her story just goes. Her and Aisha meeting up in Aisha's new house just goes nowhere because it's just like, hey Aisha, here's a lesson. Sam goes to school next day. I want to be your right. We're still enemies. What's the point of having Aisha in this episode? It's cool to having Nicole Brown, but it's just like they're gonna have Sam learn a lesson, and then she just immediately regards Aisha's lesson about befriending Tori, so she can just say, I don't like you, Tori. You may be able to fool my parents, but not me. See ya. Crap you. Bye. Like, that's just the worst type of lesson. I like that Johnny thinking that Miguel, when the girl was like, hey, she's asexual, meaning she likes girls, Johnny was like, hey, he's asexual. Like that was kind of funny because it's like Johnny doesn't understand gay LGBT. But this episode just is the worst of the season so far. I hope other people liked it as much. But I liked it. I really liked the Eli stuff, the Robbie stuff, the Cobra Kai stuff, and the Eagle stuff. The worst part of this episode was Sam's lesson. Because Sam's like, you guys don't listen to me. Hey, Aisha, tell me a lesson. Hey, Aisha, I'm going to regard your lesson now. So I can still hate Tori. What was the point of having Aisha's lesson if she's going to regard it? Aisha's like, hey, Sam, I used to have a rivalry too. Until I went after her and we became best friends. Next day, Tori's like, Sam's like, I'm still gonna be your rival because I don't care what you tell my parents. Crap off, Tori. See ya. And she just smiled. Like, it's just like, Sam feels better about herself if she Sam feels better about herself if she, like, I'd be like, end this rivalry. Have them be friends so we can finally stop having Tori-Sam rivalry. But the writers are like, oh no, we need it for the show. Nothing against the writers. I love the writers. But I'm just saying, this whole Sam needs to end. But Sam's like, I guess I'll still have one, and smile. Like saying, she feels better about herself that she's standing up to Tori. Like, you just took what Aisha was telling you and did the opposite of what Aisha was telling you. What the crap, Sam? What the crap? I don't like this episode because of Sam and because she totally says, hey Daniel, I agree with what you and Amanda said. Next day, hey Tori, I I don't care what you tell my parents. If you look at me, I'll beat you up. Like, what was the point of this episode? It just makes no sense. But enough with it. The positives were, as I said, the Robbie, the Cobra Kai, the Eagle, and the Eli stuff. The negatives were the Sam stuff, because Sam could have just been not in this episode, and it would have, like, she didn't even join Daniel's, like, thing, like, but this episode is the worst of the season. I put it below, because I don't know why I don't like it that much, but I just don't. I hope people don't bash me in my comment section saying, "Boo, this is the best episode of the series," because it's not. Sam just completely waste a lesson. They tell a lesson that Sam completely ignored for the sake of her and Tori wanting to be still rival, which is just like, what was the point? I love Aisha, but her whole, "Oh, Sam, I had a rival one. I thought I was going to have a rival in my school, but I went up to her and we were best friends." And then Sam next day is like, "Oh, Tori, I don't care what you tell my parents. I still don't trust you. And if you look at me funny in any way, I'll beat you up." What is the point of this lesson? But I'll see you next time. I hope next episode is way better than this one, because this episode may be the worst of the season. Cobra Kai usually doesn't have a worst. Cobra Kai is usually doing good with me in its episodes, but I think I just found my least favorite Cobra Kai episode ever. And it's because of Sam. Because it's like, what the crap, Sam. So see you next time. Guys, not Sam. So have an egotastic night, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Cobra Kai.